What is going on, everyone? It is Tyler McKinney back here again, and today we're getting back into the No Fun League. If it's your first time here, glad to have you. If you're a return viewer, thanks for coming back and thanks for watching more videos. And if you haven't yet, consider subscribing. Now, before we get into the No Fun League, I've got something that's actually fun and exciting. We've got the Spring League starting up, and I know it's the fall, and it's kind of weird that we have the Spring League starting in the fall, but hey, we're getting more football. What's not to love, right? So on October 27th, the Spring League will be starting their first games. They're going to be televised on Fox Sports 1, and they just today released another team name. They're calling them the Alphas, off of kind of their mascot being a wolf. It looks all right. I'll give you my thoughts in another video. We're definitely going to cover all the different team names and my thoughts on that. I'll probably do one video instead of doing an individual video like I did with all of the XFL teams. So be looking forward to that. And two, if you don't know anything about the Spring League and are more interested in it, I'll try to put something down in the description and maybe a card somewhere for you to click on, and you can see that video that I did on the upcoming Spring League season. Now, to get into the No Fun League, the NFL, the reason why I want to talk about it today is I seriously do think that the NFL is in jeopardy. Mainly, the 2020 season is in jeopardy. I don't necessarily think that the actual NFL, the entity, is in jeopardy. I just think that the season right now is in jeopardy and things aren't looking too good for it for a couple reasons. The first reason is that, you can say whatever you want, but the TV ratings are down. They are down substantially. And I'm not getting anything with it. I'm not giving you my thoughts or anything with it. I'm just stating facts. If you look at things through 4 weeks, their ratings have been down. That's just the facts. And then when you add on top of it that, they're adding in all of the ratings from the bars, restaurants, businesses, all of those on top of what they didn't last year, it already then, takes that number and makes it even larger than what it really seems like it is. Again, not getting into any thoughts of this reason why. There's just fans that either one, aren't watching, or two, are disgruntled and are not watching. But people are not watching the NFL like they have in the past. And there's many excuses to that. And listen, all the major media outlets are putting all those excuses out there. You can read them all the time. I mean, one of the big ones this past week, which is absolutely ridiculous, and you can tell that Al Michaels is not in the business of creating a profit, of having a profitable business, because he goes, listen, the NFL is just fine. They're the number one rated TV. They will be just fine. Well, when you lose somewhere, we'll be conservative and be roughly around 15% of your viewership. I don't care whoever you are. If you are losing 15% of your business, you're going to start getting worried and trying to figure out why you're losing that business. And it could be for a whole slew of things, but I can tell you it ain't to other sports, because the other sports leagues are doing probably worse than the NFL is on that. So you can see that. And here's the thing. Take what they say with a grain of salt. Why? Because, listen, I don't make any money off of the NFL talking about the NFL or any of these leagues. I'm just a guy in my basement having fun talking to you guys on the internet. However, all these other guys, they make their living, they make their money off of the NFL. If the NFL's doing well and the NFL is big and people are tuning into the NFL, that means they're going to tune into their commentary, their thoughts, their ideas, their opinions. So of course they have a stake in the NFL, and of course they've got a stake to spin things and make things look a lot better than what they are, because hey, that's their paycheck too in a roundabout way. And so when you're looking at this, that is a big deal for the NFL. The second thing that's a big deal for it is, and it's hard for me to say this because I've trained myself not to say it because the YouTube has demonetized previous videos from people for saying this, but it's the whole COVID pandemic. And if you hear me refer to it as, these times that we're living through, these things that we're going through, it has nothing to do with anything else. It's me pointing things to COVID because I'm used to viewing it, looking at it, and saying it that way. Now, getting that out of out of kind of the air and all of that, so you understand where I'm coming from with it. COVID is really an issue, and it's becoming an issue for the NFL, and I think that it's probably going to be the thing that's going to bring the NFL down here, and you're going to see it uptick. We lost one game last week and had to postpone a game to a day later because of another another slew of positive tests, and we had more positive tests come out of the Titans, the Tennessee Titans, this just here recently, and it's put their game in jeopardy. And I got a feeling they're probably going to lose another game. And if they lose another game, it's not going to be good because they already have one bye week, and they can finagle that out and figure that out to get that other game in. But having to make up two games on such a tight schedule is going to be very difficult to do. So the question is, what would you do with that? How would you do that? How are you going to look at that? And that's just logistically, if we don't even throw in there, if these things don't compound, because what we've seen is that once it's in this virtual bubble, whatever this virtual bubble thing is with them, because, the NBA, I'll give them credit for their actual bubble, keeping everybody in literally a bubble, nobody in, nobody out. That's what they're doing. This is what they're doing with it. Living in a bubble, under a bubble, and that. And, the MLB's kind of had this pseudo bubble thing, and the NFL's got this virtual bubble thing. But the reality is they're kind of like MLB, and they're going from one place to another and going all across the country. And that's just all that travels, making them much more susceptible to COVID with what's going on and that with it. And that's not me even getting into the minutia and the details of COVID, which we will hear in a second. So if you're already opening yourself up to that much more exposure, not to mention when you look at football, you're talking not about 12, 15 guys on a team. You're looking at let's just round it to 50, okay, so we can keep things easy. So you're rounding 50 guys on a team, and then, all the personnel around them. It's a much, much larger scale than what you're dealing with. You're dealing with almost over 3 times the amount of the NBA. So to do an overall bubble like that is just astronomical with that type of thing. I don't really see how you can't do it other than this virtual thing. And the reality is it's a contact sport. Literal contact sport. You're up in people's faces, you're touching people, you're wrapping your arms around people, you're struggling, you're huffing, you're puffing. Everything that social distancing is not is what football is. That's just a fact, and there's no other sport in this realm, major sport like that is not a fighting, that isn't hand-to-hand combat fighting, that is like that. And so it's a much more higher risk of contracting the disease. And here's the thing with it. You've got people on all spectrums of this. So, it doesn't matter what you say, what you do, you're going to make somebody unhappy. And we already have certain portions of the population that are still in lockdown. I mean, when you think about this and look at this, they are functioning and allowing them to do business in some of these states where people can't even do business, and they're still on lockdown in some of these areas, and that with it, which, it kind of shows the kind of the double standard that is out there with it. But getting back to the whole thing of the idea of COVID, if these things really start to pick up, they're going to have to shut down in certain areas. So what are they going to do? They're going to move these games to other areas? Because I can tell you, if you start getting these upticks, which it's looking like they're only going to get higher. Because if you have these teammates, again, these guys who have been, you can't play football without not social distancing. There's just no way of doing it. Even in practice, you're still going to need to, have those moments. So somebody tests positive, and then you go through it. And the NFL is trying to combat this by being very much more stringent. We're going to go through this. We're going to, have these penalties in place for people that don't adhere to these things. But the reality is we know from months of this that you could adhere to it the best that you can. You can do your best measures, and people will still get it. We've seen data on both sides of the things, and the reality is we still don't really fully understand this virus that we're dealing with here. So, with looking at all of that and, the ideas around it and what's going on with this, it really is, to me, looking like it's going to be just something that I don't think that they're going to be able to overcome with this, especially if they start getting 3 or 4 teams with this, because remember, 3 or 4 teams equates to it ends up being 8, 6, 8 teams, because the teams that they played and the people that they come in contact with. If you remember, we not only did the Titans positives affect the Minnesota Vikings, it also affected their game with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's looking like that's probably going to affect their game this week. And so we'll see how that goes. And it's not translating for good football for football, because what's happening is you're getting these guys who are testing positive, who don't have necessarily any symptoms, but they're so worried about anybody else getting it. And again, I'm not downplaying it. I think that, we're dealing with, something we don't really know. I think that I'm probably fall in the middle, to where some people probably think that I'm careless about the way I handle things, how I do things, and people that think that I'm pandering way too much, and why am I doing what I'm doing, because it doesn't help. And there are views on both sides of that with it. So I'm not even going really necessarily there with it. But when you're keeping your best players off of the field, and there's nothing wrong with them, and they could quite possibly be playing or doing things, and they're not sick, that really is tough, because your season's getting affected by things that you can't control, that you can't do, and that in any other circumstance, if it were like say the flu, because there are times where people contract the flu, they had the flu, they have they have that in influenza in them, and they just don't get sick, and other people do. I mean, we've lived in a society with that. I mean, Americans were notorious for powering through and going to work sick, and that with it. So, I see this as this is really not only hurting them in the aspect of, shutting things down, shutting operations down, trying to figure other things out and doing other things, but it also hurts them when it comes to their personnel. Biggest example is New England with their, missing Cam Newton. And, thankfully in the NFL, they have an opportunity to do that. You pull a star player from a team, and that takes their trajectory, from being a high-profile team to just an average team. Or a national championship contender down to just a very good team. So it makes a huge difference in this scenario. But right now, as I look at it, there's really 2 big factors here that are putting the season in jeopardy. And again, this is a contract year for the NFL. There are billions of dollars at stake here. So if their TV numbers are not doing well, and if they got to cancel the season, they're not going to be making the money that they're looking to make. Again, they're a business. And I know we can talk about that this is entertainment and this, which it is, but the owners and the people that are the execs of the league are in this to make money, in it to do that. And I can tell you that it's going to be a trickle-down effect. If the guys aren't making the money at the top, they're not bringing in the dollars, it's got to equate somewhere else, and that's going to trickle down to the players, and it's going to and that's going to affect everybody. It's going to affect then the coverage of it. It's going to affect everything as it goes down the line. So if they can't fix these TV ratings, and they can't fix this idea of COVID, which the COVID thing is out of their hands, the TV ratings things, if they could just get their focus back to football, I think that they'd get some people back. I know that there are a lot of people that are pretty much out there that said that they're done with it. But the COVID thing, I think, because of where a lot of our and again, I'm not condemning anything. I'm not saying anything one way or another. I'm just saying that where a good portion of the United States population is with the COVID, I really see you start seeing this thing snowball. You start seeing more teams testing positive. You start seeing more players testing positive. I think that you could get the season seriously shut down, and by week 6, week 7, they're done. I could really see that. The other thing is, right now it might not be lucrative for them. I don't know. I wouldn't like to be an executive in the NFL right now, period, because things are not well. You're trying to figure out how to bring these TV ratings up, trying to figure out how to navigate this COVID, and keep people on both sides of the aisle happy. Try to get some fans in there so you can generate some revenue, bring some of that back because you're not getting the revenue in that you really need. And so, it might be just kind of one of those things we just need to, kick the can down the road and just say, hey, cut operations and that because it's, just easier if we don't pay out the operations because of, this, that, and the other thing. I don't know. It could be, though, that their TV deals for them to get their TV money, they have to keep that in place. And so they've got to keep it going, which, again, each way you try to slice it, you're going to make somebody upset. If they have all this COVID stuff going on, but they know they got to keep business going because, hey, if not, they're not going to bring in any money, then they're going to lose out on a lot. So even with all this COVID stuff, they start to do things that, some people would deem as irresponsible. Then they lose fans that way, lose possibly players that way, lose personnel that way. And then, on the opposite side of things, if they go ahead and, they listen to the other side and, according to some people, overdo it and make all of these changes and all this stuff to do that, and then they lose people that way as well. I mean, it really is a no-win situation where they're sitting at right now. I would not want to be that. The season is literally in jeopardy. We're going to keep following this with it. Because it really is unprecedented what we're living through, what we're going through, and really this, and sports is like everything else. It's been hit hard, and the sports world's trying to figure it out. But like always, the question is, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this no fun league stuff. And I'd also like to hear your thoughts on what you think of the spring league. Let me know down in the comment section. I'd love to hear that and continue the conversation on down there. All right, guys, I know that you're busy. I know that I'm busy. So let's get on out of here. You have a good night. Bye.